This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
You don't just wake up one day and decide to murder 4 people. Not like this, you don't. Not with the kind of precision Bryan Kohberger allegedly showed inside that off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. You don't bypass 2 roommates, target 4 others, and vanish into the dark without leaving a trail unless you've walked that mental path long before your feet hit the ground. And according to the newest unsealed documents, he didn't just imagine it, he allegedly practiced it. In this segment, we're not just talking about what happened, we're going back to what came before. Before the blood, before the cameras, before the arrest. We're looking at the buildup because the pattern is there now. And it's ugly. We know he allegedly surveilled the King Road home more than 20 times. We know he turned his phone off before the murders, but not before allegedly searching police scanner feeds. We know he had ID cards of women who weren't victims, just people he'd interacted with. That's a loose word when you're dealing with the guy who collects trophies. So what does that kind of pre-crime behavior really mean? Is this about fantasy, about compulsion, or cold, calculated rehearsal? Joining me now is psychotherapist and author of The Minds of Mass Killers. You can get this wherever you get books. Shavaun Scott. She spent her career dissecting the evolution of violent minds, and today she's helping us break this one down. So let's get into it. What does Kohberger's pattern here of surveillance and control suggest about his psychological profile leading up to the murders itself?
Yeah, none of this newly revealed information surprises me at all. In fact, it's exactly the MO of a sexual domination serial killer. Mm-hmm. So I would have been surprised if this kind of stuff wasn't going on. And it's very common. These guys are fantasy driven, and there's always a buildup. I mean, they never commit a murder like this just, get up one day and I'm going to get a big knife and go kill people. It's always years of these kinds of bizarre fantasies about sexual violence. And the stalking, surveillance, that's also classic, because if you have somebody who's obsessive, methodical, doesn't want to get caught, going into this with a lot of rehearsal, they want to understand their target, their victim, and they do their homework, they do their research. It's also, as far as the burglary, they often commit practice crimes before then. And
we're going to get into that in just a little bit. I want to talk about what's something that struck me here, the fantasy driven. Because when you look at a large chunk of the young male population going right into adulthood, they seem to live in a fantasy land. A lot of it driven by video games. Not everyone, but I'd say a hell of a lot higher number than there used to be. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a fantasy life or having, in a healthy sort of way with clear boundaries and understanding the difference between reality and fantasy. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And I don't know what Kohberger's video game habits were, and I'm not trying to blame video games, but my point here being is there's a lot of young men that seem to have and live in somewhat of a fantasy land, and that's been exposed to time and time again once these people get caught. Another one I'm thinking of is Matty Soto's murderer, Stefan Stearns. He was really big into fantasy stuff, talked about it like he was 12, basically, when he spoke to his mom, even after the murders. He's into this, he's into that. I got this card, I got that card. Is this a problem in the way that we're allowing these young men to be brought up in this country, where fantasy becomes just a little too close to reality, and then for some of them, there really is no boundary between the two?
That's an interesting supposition. I can't say we have any data on that at this point. The internet and the video games, the way they're immersive, the way they are now, this is all relatively new. And so we're still probably just in the early phases of observing our brains changing from the immersion in virtual worlds. We can definitely say that it causes people who are highly immersed in the virtual world, whether it's video games or, chat rooms or other kinds of things, that they're disengaged more from real life activities and from social activities and physical activities because they're isolated in their bedrooms all the time. And that is not particularly good for people. We know that having a well-connected real life, social life is protective psychologically. The other concern that I have is how I see tremendous problems with what you could call porn addiction with young men. And that troubles me because, I'll see in therapy 30, 35-year-olds who've never gone on a date with a real woman. And they're very sexually active, but it's all on porn sites. And again, then, as would fit with any kind of serial killer, what kind of porn sites are they accessing? And how does this affect a developing young mind when you're talking about an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old? When their sexual mapping is occurring, when they're determining their way for seeking gratification, and do they learn then how to relate to real women?
How much is AI going to make this worse? where people can literally have any thought that they have in their mind come to reality. Because there's a lot of weird stuff out there. Stuff that is seemingly bordering on like fantasy of people/animal type things going on. And this is kind of going off topic of Kohberger, but since we're kind of going down this road of fantasy and weird ways of thinking and normalizing in very young minds. In theory, this world can now open up people, or not open up people's minds, but direct people's minds towards very dark paths at very young ages that would be illegal if acted out, but can now seemingly, be virtually simulated in ways that never existed before.
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns about that. There have been different programs over the years, different game-like programs focused on sexuality. There was one created in Japan that the goal of the you played from first-person point of view, and the goal was to rape people.
Jesus Christ.
Literally. Yeah, and that was in the title of the game. I won't say the whole title of the game, but it had the word rape in it. And that came out probably 12, 13 years ago. And I actually was doing seminars on the problematic use of video games. And that was one game that I used as an example of something that, we're programming people here with this. So AI, I know ChatGPT now because I have a friend who was writing a book that had a lot of sexual themes in it, and she was trying to use ChatGPT, and it would pop up and say, I am not allowed to respond to that kind of question.
Yeah.
And so, they are trying to screen and filter, but what other things are in the future? It's alarming.
Yeah. When we've been doing a series on the Devil's Den case, and then discovering the murderer, the alleged murderer, had a history of issues with schools and allegations of predatory type behavior, and using those words. Oh my God, the amount of heck we went through with ChatGPT just to try and get answers was hellish, because it's like, bad word. It's like in context.
Exactly.
We're learning, and you say it's a news story. Oh, okay. But yeah, and I'm glad that there are those sort of safe things in place, but they need to make sense and understand what they're doing. We know that he searched the police scanner and websites before the attack. How does that fit within the behavior of someone escalating towards a mass killing when he's prepping this stuff? What would be the police scanner end of things? That's kind of, I guess you'd think it's a little bit old school to a young person, but obviously he's listening in and probably trying to look at response times and such. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, looking for patterns, looking for patterns. He did not want to be caught, and he was clearly using his knowledge of the criminal justice system to his advantage, how to become a better criminal, which is scary how many people may go into this field of study with that agenda. I don't think it's most of them, but certainly some do.
So we're left with this. A man who wasn't improvising, who wasn't acting out of impulse or rage, but allegedly building something, testing doors, studying routines, creeping up the line again and again without crossing it until he decided it was time. And that's the part that should shake us, because if we only define danger by what someone does, we'll always be late. Kohberger wasn't invisible. He just hadn't acted yet. The visits to the house, the scanner searches, the collection of IDs, those are behaviors that exist in a blind spot. Not illegal, just alarming. Just enough to raise an eyebrow, but not enough to file a charge. And yet, when you pull back and look at the whole picture, it's almost textbook escalation, quiet, creeping, methodical, and maybe worst of all, avoidable. Shavaun laid it out clearly. Killers like Kohberger don't explode, they calcify over time. And our systems, both legal and cultural, aren't built to catch someone in that phase. We don't know what to do with the man who's circling your block at 2 a.m. but hasn't done anything yet. But if we want to stop the next Kohberger, we'd better figure it out. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're not already there, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. You can make that same search wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss any of our reporting on this case and the many that we cover here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. There's more in my conversation with Shavaun coming up tomorrow. So be sure to press subscribe so you don't miss that. Until next time, my name is Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.